Hi guys, I know it's been a while, but today I am back with a video just to share some interesting things that have been happening in my life most recently. And in this video, I will actually be speaking about how my psychic medium abilities have evolved over time and what's been going on with them most recently. Just to fill you guys in, if just in case you're not aware, my first time ever having an experience with my psychic medium abilities was back in 2019 when I began to meditate every day. And the first time it happened, it really frightened me. So from that point on, I had blocked the experience. I basically suppressed the experience and the abilities at that time because I was afraid. And I also, around that time, I stopped meditating for a while because it was just frightening for me. I believe like a year or more had gone by, and I had begun to question and wonder why it had never happened again. I became like really curious about it and more open to that gift when I learned that it was an actual gift. Um, and then, I started meditating consistently again around that time. And then that's when the experiences started to happen again. However, it wasn't ever consistent. It would just happen sometimes when I would meditate. And, I was starting to feel more comfortable with it, although I wasn't completely comfortable yet around that time. In I believe it was 2020 when I started to open up to it again. So from 2020 and beyond, I was meditating consistently. However, these experiences, communicating with spirits, they would only happen like randomly, like once every few months, right? So it happened that way for a few years, I'll say up until 2023. And I noticed that in 2023, that's when the experience began to change a little for me. It was still very inconsistent, like once every few months. And at that point, because it was so inconsistent, I just assumed that, like, oh, this is just something that only happens every once in a while. And I was like, okay, it's kind of cool. And anyway, I noticed in 2023, it began to shift a little. So at first, it would only happen when I would meditate. And in 2023, it started to happen in other scenarios where I would just be in a really relaxed mental state. For example, it happened when I was massaging my scalp one day. It also happened when I was doing my daughter's hair. It also happened when I was like reading a book and things like that. And it would still happen, once in a while when I would be in meditation. But at that point, even though it began to shift as far as like it was happening outside of meditation, it was still very inconsistent every once in a while. So at that point, it wasn't really alarming to me. So 2024 came, and I want to say it happened one time like in January. And at that point, it still felt normal to me because it was, every once in a while. But after January came, it started to happen every week, and then it increased to like daily or multiple times a week, and then daily, and then multiple times a day. And that's when it became very alarming to me because I was under the impression, or I had made myself believe that it was just something that would happen every once in a while. And it began to happen a lot more frequently. It became uncomfortable and overwhelming for me. So I'll say even when it began to occur more often, it was like I was alarmed, but I knew this thing existed within me, so it wasn't, I'll say, as surprising. But the overwhelmment came from it happening so frequently. Now, I'll say the first time I felt like really overwhelmed with it was one day. I was actually in the middle of reading something that somebody had sent to me, and in the midst of that, a spirit came through, and it was somebody that I knew of, and I immediately just started to feel like I was having a panic attack. Now, in that moment, it could have been like many reasons why I was feeling that way. The person who had passed, who was communicating with me, he had passed tragically. So that could have been a reason why I felt like that. And also, I may have also felt that way because I was resisting having to send a message to his brother who he was trying to get a message to, maybe because of his death being so tragic. Really sensitive. So in the midst of that, I immediately just started crying, and I felt like I was having a panic attack. So when I meditated after I was like through crying, and I was just talking to my spirit guides to like receive some insight and some instruction, because I'm just like, what if I'm just making all of this up? Like, I was really honestly just resisting the whole experience. And my spirit guide was just telling me to allow myself to relax and allow the information to come through, because there was a part of me that was worried that I was going to mess up the message. There was a part of me who was worried about, what if I'm just making all of this stuff up? And there was a part of me that was curious as to why I felt like I was panicking. And my spirit guides basically just told me that I was feeling that way simply because I was resisting the interaction, which is true. And my spirit guide was just advising me to relax and allow the information to flow. So I did, and I was able to receive the message that needed to be sent. And after that day, though, I still felt overwhelmed with the whole psychic medium thing, because it was still happening often. And I'll say the main thing that really made me feel overwhelmed with it was because, like I mentioned before, at first it was only happening during meditations, and then it started to shift into other times, like when my mind would just be relaxed. So now just imagine, it's not only happening frequently during meditations, it's happening, even though back then what I was just speaking of, it wasn't happening frequently, but I'm speaking of now, it began to happen very frequently. And it wasn't just during meditations, it was anytime my mind was relaxed. Like, for example, sitting in the bathtub with my eyes closed, in the shower with my eyes closed, on my way to bed, being woken up out of my sleep, reading a book, doing some journaling, during my deep breathing. It was literally happening easily anytime I was just in a relaxed state of being. So after that, because it felt so overwhelming to me, I began to not allow myself to be relaxed anymore. So when I would like bathe and stuff like that, I wouldn't even allow myself to just like close my eyes and really enjoy the experience and relax, because I was trying to avoid that thing from happening, because when I was bathing, like I just wanted to bathe. And even something as simple as me just lounging on the couch and just closing my eyes for a minute, I would avoid doing that because I was trying to avoid that thing from happening. And during that time, which was a couple weeks where I was really trying to avoid it by not allowing myself to relax, I began to enter into a state of just not being at ease. Like, I'll say I felt a little chaotic mentally because I wasn't allowing myself to relax. And I had also stopped meditating as consistently as I was. And then when I would meditate, I wasn't allowing myself to go deep because I was trying to avoid having the experience because I felt like I couldn't control it. So I had learned in that process that it was really important to set boundaries with the spirit world. And honestly, how can I explain it? Okay, so basically, from my understanding, how it works is like you have to set boundaries simply because they're not worried about what you have going on. The only thing they know is that like they're aware of your frequency and they're aware of the fact that you have the ability to send messages. So they're taking like any opportunity that they can to come through and send a message to somebody or get a message to somebody. So it's like that's why it's important to have boundaries, and that's how it can become overwhelming. So over time, I have learned how to set boundaries with the spirit world. However, I am still working through just getting myself back comfortable with the whole thing, simply because a part of me is still wanting to be in control of it not happening so much. So I'm still like working through that mentally because it did become like really overwhelming for me. And I am grateful because I was able to receive insight from my spirit guides and also, advice from them, which was really helpful. But my human brain is still working through getting back comfortable with the whole thing. So since then, I will say that it has still been occurring, not as much as it was when I became overwhelmed. One thing that I did start doing in the meantime was I ordered this book. It's called You Are a Medium by Sherry Dillard. And this has actually been very helpful for me with this whole process. And there are like different exercises in this book. And when I would do the exercises, you basically have to call in a loved one. And I'll say that that was really helpful for me to communicate with a loved one who I am choosing to communicate with. That made me feel a lot more comfortable with communicating with the other side and things like that. So yes, I'm taking everything one step at a time, but I am still just working towards just fully allowing myself to be comfortable, simply because like this gift is not a burden at all. It's just a matter of learning how to work with it so that it works for me. And also it's just like I have an understanding of how important it is, because by me being able to get these messages to the people that they are for, if I'm able to, it provides a lot of healing for them, and it's typically something that they really need. So I will say that that is one thing that I am extremely grateful for, because there has been a number of people that I have reached out to deliver these messages, and they actually really needed the message, and it had helped them in some kind of way. Overall, I'm just putting in the work to become more comfortable with it so that I can be able to assist others in the best way that I can, while also making sure that I am in the best space that I can be in to be able to interpret and deliver the messages. Well, that's actually all that I wanted to share today. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you all have a beautiful day.